Welcome back. It's time to get restless. Thanks for joining us on The Restless Show. Our hearts are restless until they rest in the Lord. I'm Father Joseph Gill here with Lauren, Diane, and Javier as we explore what it means to be a young adult Catholic in our world today. Do you guys remember that old movie, There's Something About Mary? Might be before your time.
I don't know that I've seen that one.
I haven't seen it either, but that was a famous title. I guess it was probably around the year 98 or 99. And today's topic is Mary, because there's something about her. That movie had nothing to do with the Blessed Mother. I have no idea what it had to do with.
It had nothing to do with the Blessed Mother.
No, it didn't.
No,
but this episode has a lot to do with the Blessed Mother. In fact, everything to do with her. So, Marian devotion, Marian relationship is, for people that are not Catholic, is perhaps one of the biggest stumbling blocks and one of the biggest questions that I get asked as a priest. What is your deal with Mary? And that's a good question, So, first of all, do you guys have a relationship with Mary, their Blessed Mother?
Yes, very strong. I think that was one thing that started very young for me. I don't know what it was. I feel like Mary is just so powerful and so loving, and I felt that. It was one of those things that didn't need to be told. It was self-evident. So I've always had a very close relationship with her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I could say the same thing. Yeah, I've always felt drawn to her and close to her. Like she's someone I can trust, and I always pray to her, and I love to pray to her and just imagine her coming and helping, because I'm sure that she does,
Yeah. So,
I
as our former Protestant, Javier.
I had a very, very strong relationship with her when I was a kid. I think I said it in prior episodes that, I used to pray at least one rosary every night, and then sometimes two. And I think after, when I was going to evangelical church and then now coming back, that's something I'm kind of wrestling with in a sense. It's, I don't know. I think it's kind of I have such a strong relationship with Jesus, such a strong relationship with him, that I do wrestle sometimes with praying to Mary. Even though I pray the rosary every day, I still struggle with praying to her, with bringing my needs to her directly, because I do find myself in the middle of doing it, I turn straight to Jesus. And I don't know if that's just in my mind or what it is, but I've been listening a lot to Scott Hahn, and how he talks about his conversion from being a Protestant to becoming a Catholic, and the biblical understanding of who Mary is and stuff. And it's amazing. It's mind blowing, who she is, based on several books in the Old Testament and stuff, and how she gets revealed as, being the ark for Jesus, and how she was the one that carried Jesus and stuff. And through theology of the body, there's also some other stuff as well. But I can't say that my relationship with her is as strong as I want it to be. And I think it's just the work that the Lord is still doing in my heart.
Yeah.
Because I do wrestle with that. And maybe I do need some spiritual guidance or something. But
that's something I've wrestled with too, personally, in my own life. I've also prayed the rosary every day since I was 16. And even though I pray the rosary, I focus on Jesus. But that, John Paul II says that the rosary is like looking at the life of Jesus through the eyes of Mary.
Right.
Which I think is a beautiful thing. I mean, how else can we see Jesus more clearly than with the one who loved him so perfectly here on this earth?
Yeah.
But outside of that, I never really went to Mary to ask for anything or to speak with her. Partly because, as you said, Javier, that I just had such a close relationship with Christ. And I figured just go straight to the top. If you're friends with the boss, why talk to the boss's secretary? But then I realized, this summer in a particular way, I've been really growing in that relationship with our Blessed Mother. And one thing that happened to me this summer, which kind of helped me in that, was I had the privilege this past summer of going to Wyoming to work with Wyoming Catholic College on a little retreat. They do these great 2-week backpacking trips with teenagers, and they needed some priests to come along and kind of be a chaplain. And so they split up into 2 groups. There was about 50 teenagers who were on the trip, and there were 2 chaplains. And they did this 4-day backpacking trip, and it was a loop. But each group went separately, went a different direction on the loop. So they crossed over once. And they split it up, boys and girls. And I ended up being the chaplain of the girls group. And I was like, okay, I've got like 30 teenage girls under my tutelage for the next 4 days out in the wilderness. How in the world am I going to relate to them? And I kind of, through that experience, kind of discovered the feminine genius, just in talking with them and kind of getting to know what makes them tick a little bit more, and understood, in them, they were these girls who were just so deeply devoted to the Lord and just radiated Christ so much. And I could really see in them kind of an image of the Blessed Mother. And it helped me to understand kind of what the Blessed Mother lived like when she was here on this earth, in her deep relationship with Christ. Yeah. And since then, I've been really kind of taking Mary more as my own model of how a disciple should be, to look to Christ more and more and be transformed into him through his grace.
Yeah, she was the first yes.
She was the first yes.
First disciple.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't call her a disciple in the Bible, but she was the first disciple, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
She believed in Christ before he was even born.
Exactly.
She knew who he was.
And she's just the perfect example of, I think oftentimes I used to think, she knew everything in advance, but she didn't. I mean, she's an example of complete self-surrender, complete humility, and she suffered. She suffered immensely. And so she is sort of this person that we can look to, and she did everything perfectly, but she didn't experience anything that we aren't experiencing. She wasn't immune to any of that. And I think it's just very, she's just someone that you can look to be, give more of yourself, and just that perfect example of how you give your life to God.
Yeah.
Through all the trials. I mean, her life was not perfect. She didn't know, she didn't know where she was going to give birth. She didn't know what was going to happen.
Right. She lost her son when he was 12.
Yeah.
And of course, went through the passion with him. Everything that happened to Jesus in body happened to Mary in soul during the passion.
Yeah.
She was kind of that perfect participant in it. So what title or aspects, do you relate to, for Mary? Because I know Mary has a lot of different titles and definitely different events in her life. Are there any that kind of resonate more with you than perhaps others?
I can't say why. I like Queen of Peace. One, because, Queen, and she is coronated in our Queen. But just that she brings the peace, and even, throughout history, we've seen that, right? At Fatima, she warned of conflict's going to get worse in the world, right? If we don't stop this evil, but there can be peace. And what happened, things got worse, and there was World War II. But things got better eventually, and I'm sure she played a big part in that,
Sure, when the world was consecrated to the Immaculate Heart.
Yeah.
Which John Paul II did. And that was what she said, consecrate Russia and the world to my Immaculate Heart, and you will have peace. Yeah.
And that's just amazing, right? Like that she has that impact, that she's, I think, a lot more involved in what's going on than we realize.
Yeah. Yeah. History's not a random sequence of events. God is intimately involved in political
100%.
players and wars and calamities and good things too. And he's working out his purposes. His purposes are good.
Yeah.
What about you, Javier? What's your relation to Mary that you are drawn to?
Blessed Mother. That's just what I'm drawn to. Just because I do find myself to be, I find myself to be related to Jesus in a way. I mean, like, he's my father, he's my brother, he's my everything. He's my best friend. He's the one that I go to for everything. And if she was the mother of our Lord, then she's my mother. That's just the way I look at her. Now, he's still God. So, but that's the one where when I refer to her, I always call her our Blessed Mother. Anytime I'm going to talk about her, I say our Blessed Mother.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to just say Mary. It's hard for me to say anything else. I just say Our Blessed Mother.
That's cool.
That's what I call
That's
her.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think for me, it's advocate of sinners and comforter of the afflicted. Just because I just feel like she is, I can go to her for all of my, I guess, issues that I have. And she is comforting and she is an advocate. And I think of like the Old Testament idea of like the Queen Mother, and how powerful that is, and sort of how it helps me to understand her role, as an advocate. So, yeah.
That's awesome. For me, it's always been, we call Mary the singular honor of our race. And I guess it's kind of like, when I look at the world, I see fallen human beings everywhere, myself first and foremost. And when I think that there's, wow, like, man, we screwed up, Lord. Like, there's nothing good in the human race. Like, we're so sinful. And we're so, such original sin. But then wait, no, there was one person who didn't. And I was like, wow, that's kind of our boast as human beings, that there was one member who loved God as he deserved to be loved, who never was stained with sin.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's always struck me.
That's very profound.
So with these different kind of ways in which we're attracted to God, how's that played out like in your devotions? Like what sort of devotions to our Blessed Mother have you gotten involved in? Do you still pray the Rosary, Javier?
I pray it every day.
Awesome.
I do.
Nice.
I don't know if I think it's mainly out of obedience. There is a desire in my heart to have a strong relationship with Mary, but I do wrestle with what I said earlier. I mean, I wrestle with going to her. I think part of it too might be a wound that I need to heal, having grown up in a Hispanic country and then years later in the States becoming a Protestant, and then really kind of realizing that some of the people I grew up with, they did worship Mary. I mean, like, in the sense that I could not tell you that they ever prayed to Jesus.
Really?
But they always prayed to Mary.
Really?
Always. Like ladies in South American countries. Oh my gosh. There's no statue of Jesus or anything like that, but there's statues of Mary everywhere you go in their houses and stuff, and candles all around them, and I'm like, and I do see it because I think I told you I go to Mass at St. Benedict's, and the priest.
St. Benedict's is the Hispanic parish here in Stanford.
Yes, the priest always says it. He says that, there's a lot of Marian people out there that they pray more to the Blessed Mother than they do to Jesus. And I just look around and these ladies are just like, they just look down and they're like, you can tell that's them.
They look down because their rosaries are in their hands and they're praying right there during Mass.
Right. And I think that's part of the reason why I wrestle with it, because I don't want to pray. I want to be able to look at my prayer life and say, well, I'm praying more to Jesus. I'm spending more time having a conversation with Jesus, speaking to him, than I am going to his mother, Well,
if it's done right, Mary will lead us to Jesus.
Right.
If it's done right.
Yeah.
I too have met people that kind of have Mary on a higher pedestal than Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the scary part for me, that like, I do see my life when I was a kid, and I don't remember having a relationship with Jesus. I don't. But I do remember all of my prayers being the rosary. I never remember having a conversation with Jesus. Never. I don't. But I do remember that. And I remember always standing in front of Mary at the school and always praying to her, always talking to her. I don't remember standing in front of a crucifix and talking to Jesus. I just always thought about Jesus as like, he's way too high, I can't get to him, so I'm going to go to Mary, And that's how I always thought about it. And now I think that's part of the reason that's a wound that I need to heal. I need to get over that so that I can have a relationship with her.
Yeah.
So I do understand. I mean, I believe in all the miracles. I believe in the things she's done in the world and stuff, and how she's moved people's hearts and how she's brought people to Jesus, to a strong relationship with him. I mean, you take some of the mystics. I mean, they have a strong relationship with Mary. Take Padre Pio, who probably had a much stronger relationship with Jesus than I'm ever going to have. And he probably prayed like 5-10 rosaries a day.
I remember hearing a story of Padre Pio that one man came up to him and boasted, I prayed 2 rosaries today. And Padre Pio said, that's very good. I've prayed 36.
Wow.
Yeah, and then somewhere, somehow, he probably still had time to speak to our Lord,
Yeah.
more than that. So,
Sure.
it's possible. I just need to heal that wound and,
Yeah.
keep at it.
And I think we often react when we see an overemphasis on something that shouldn't be overemphasized.
Right.
So we kind of go to the opposite extreme. And certainly after the Second Vatican Council, unfortunately, I think a lot of church members kind of kicked out Marian devotion because perhaps maybe it was too overemphasized beforehand. And they wanted to get the focus back on Christ, but you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. No, I
So-
think you nailed it in the head. I think that's it, 100%. And running away from that, then I find myself like, oh, I'm not spending any time with her at all. Now I'm like trying to like doze it in and stuff, and I do see the blessings from it.
Yeah.
The days that I don't pray the rosary don't go the same.
That's for sure.
So,
Yeah, and there's a difference between, I think maybe it's some of the wounds from the past, but there's definitely a difference between worshiping Mary and having a devotion to her.
Right.
So, I mean, one of the things Lauren and I did was the consecration to Mary. And I mean, it's this idea that, Jesus came into the world through Mary. And so if we want to be sort of close to Jesus, what better person to go to and, to have her guide us. And her like consecration, basically, it means to set aside your life for a sacred purpose. And Mary's life was set aside for the sole purpose of serving God. It wasn't like, oh, I'm here, like, come worship me. It was totally not that at all. So,
right.
I think sometimes our perceptions of what people are doing or not, and maybe they're doing it wrong, but I don't think that we should let our perception of what people are doing sort of impede what is truly that like beautiful relationship that really, the focus is on Christ. It's not on Mary. It's through
Right.
Mary to Christ.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That was Pope John Paul II's motto, Totus Tuus, which means all yours, Jesus through Mary.
Yeah, and it's this, I do think that we have to be careful of, and I know that you've told me that story before of seeing all these women with the candles and everything, but it's this idea that, just because you see, Protestants say it all the time, you see people praying in front of statues. This premise of worship, there's this, there has to be a false god and you're worshiping a statue. That's not what people are doing. It's like if you go to Washington, D.C. and you see statues there and people are staring at them or, putting flowers next to whatever, you're not necessarily worshiping them. But, Mary is, the mediatrix, and think of the wedding at Cana. Her son, listen to her. It's just, she's so powerful, but it's not worship of her. It's to get closer to Christ. And she just lived a life of total like consecration to God. It wasn't about her.
Yeah. So you have a deep devotion to Mary. How's that played out? Do you
Yeah,
do the rosary? Do you anything else?
Yeah, I do the rosary. And I started the 5 Saturday devotion. I just feel like she's one of the reasons that she sort of, she makes petitions, I guess, to Christ. And I think that I don't know, in my head, it's like this idea of lobbying, right? Like we have this, why not? We can go to Christ, but like, why not get the whole, gang together but there's this Old Testament idea. This is not something that like we made up, of the Queen Mother and how powerful she was in Jewish culture. And it's that same, this is not something made up. It's real.
Sure.
Can you share more of that from the Old Testament?
Yeah, I guess
Well, the story that comes to my mind is the story of David and Bathsheba. So Bathsheba was the mother of Solomon, and there was a real big question at the beginning of, I think, the first book of Kings about who was going to be the successor to David, because Solomon was not the oldest. He was, somewhere down there, and he was basically from an adulterous union, right? So David, so this other one of the other sons of David said, "I'm going to be the king because I'm the oldest, I'm the best," and he set himself up as king. And Bathsheba went to David and said, "David, is this really what you wanted? Because I think that my son Solomon should be king." And David's like, "Happy wife, happy life. I'm gonna say yes." And he granted the request of the queen, Queen Bathsheba, so that her son Solomon became the king. And even after David's death, because Solomon had 200 wives and 700 concubines. I don't know how he kept track of their anniversaries. But if you got 200 wives, who are you going to pick to be your queen? Well, that wasn't the custom back then. The custom was to pick the mother of the king was going to be the queen.
Yeah.
So she was going to be the one that really had, second to the king, the most authority in the realm. And so Bathsheba served as that for Solomon. So Mary serves as that for Christ, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Christ on the cross, he gave us Mary as our mother. Her life, I mean, her last words, do whatever he tells you. I mean, it wasn't ever about her. It was always about him.
Yeah.
It's like Constantine and Saint Helena, how she was the most powerful woman in the kingdom. I mean, yet she was just the mother of the king.
Right.
And she was the one that, thanks to her, I mean, now we have all the relics that we have in the world because she set out to, she sent everybody out and, they found true cross and they planted churches and stuff. And, I mean, that was kind of the same. When you were talking about that, I was remembering a talk that I heard from Scott Hahn. He was talking about that, how, she was the most powerful woman in the empire, and she wasn't Constantine's wife. She was his mother.
The mother, yeah. Mothers always have a unique power over their children, do they not?
No, for sure.
You'll do anything your mom says or asks, even now as an adult, right?
I mean, they even have a power over their husbands.
That's true too. But I think how could Jesus refuse any request from his mother? Because his mother's will is perfectly united to his will. So she wouldn't request something that Jesus wouldn't will, right? I mean, if Jesus loves us perfectly and he always wants to do what's best for us because he is God, and God can only love because God is love, and Mary is so totally united to God's will that she wills what he wills, then when she presents a request to God, it's really just kind of, I think, just honoring her for us to go through her. And God loves to use intermediaries, doesn't he?
Yeah. He
could have just preached the gospel to the whole world by using a megaphone, right? I mean, Jesus didn't need to use 12 apostles. He didn't need to use any of us to preach the gospel, but he gets glory by using weak instruments for his purposes, like you and I.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, God says, well, I'm going to pick the weakest and most unexpected person, a 14-year-old girl who in that culture may or may not have been literate, probably not literate, probably didn't go to school, had no rights. I'm going to use her and exalt her as the queen of heaven and earth. God gets a lot of glory for that, He just says, look what I can do among the weak of the world. That should give us a lot of hope. Look what he can do with you and I. We who are the weak of the world.
I think we could have a whole other episode, and we probably should, about, aside from just the devotions and everything, I mean, how much is fulfilled through Mary from the Old Testament. And we say that Jesus is the new Adam, but Mary is the new Eve.
Right.
Both of them together, instead of falling, they defeated the enemy, and that's why they're, there's no reason why, like, a lot of people say, like, well, it's just Jesus is the new Adam and that's it. I'm like, no, there is a woman in the picture.
Yeah.
There is a woman in the picture, and she was chosen by God for a reason, right? And she was without sin, meaning that, they were both tempted by the devil, and they both overcame those temptations, which Adam and Eve did not.
Right. We go all the way back to Genesis. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, God says, she shall crush the head of Satan, addressing Satan. So
exactly.
If she, Mary, is that woman who will not be tempted, it's not that she wasn't tempted, but she would not fall into sin. She's the one that fulfilled that prophecy.
Exactly. And there's so much more. I think we would need an entire episode to talk about all the parallels between everything that God fulfilled through Mary from the Old Testament. But I think that's an entire episode in and of its own.
So for any of our listeners out there, I recommend reading Scott Hahn's book, Hail, Holy Queen.
Yes.
Which is a great book about that. But Lauren, you did the consecration to Mary.
I did. Yeah, back in May. So I just learned about this on the retreat I did in March. And the sister that I got close to there was like, okay, after you leave here, you should really consecrate yourself to Mary. So I was like, okay, great. What's that? You know, and I can't articulate it as well as she did. Obviously, I went through it, and Morning Glory is the book. There's short readings every day, but just going through that, reading the book is great. So I would recommend that to anyone. But she was like, you know, anything that you pray or offer up, anything you do, all your good works are given to Mary, right? Which is so amazing. And so, you know, what you're saying at the end of your life, right? When you're in heaven, like all of my works are kind of no more, but everything is glorified through Mary, right? Everything that she does. So I think that's incredible. It's kind of hard to understand. And now that I've done it, I'm like, well, did it work? You know, I don't know. But I'm trying to like offer her up prayers. And now I kind of question, like, I'll pray to Mary all the time for certain people or different things, like someone in the family who passed away. But again, everything now that I offer up to her, she can take and she can use it, right, for anyone. So I wonder, like, oh, is this prayer going to go to Carl who just passed away or not? I don't know. But I still just offer up the prayers, and I trust that she's doing her part, you know?
Yeah, I wouldn't think of God like a postal service. You know? Like,
Well, I guess
being
really what I
delivered.
mean is the grace.
Yeah.
Like the grace going to others. If I'm asking for it, is it going to reach them? I don't know.
Oh,
But
I'm sure it will.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yesterday, I don't say the rosary so often. I know I should. And I'm constantly like, come on, Lord, do it. But a friend of mine's son has been sick, and he texted me, you know, to let me know. And so I prayed a rosary for him yesterday because I happened to go to St. Catherine's, and there's a statue of Mary outside that I know and I like. And I was like, oh, why don't I go sit by Mary and say this rosary for him, for Alex? And it was nice. I don't know. It's just a beautiful moment, and I enjoyed it. So I'm like, come on, keep doing this. Make it, you know, routine.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a great routine to get into. I started praying when I was 16, and I took it on as a Lenten penance because at the time, I really did not like praying the rosary at all, very strongly. And then I was going through my conversion, and I was like, I got to do something for Lent this year. I'm going to take on the worst penance ever. I'm going to pray the rosary every day. And like I was setting like land speed records with the rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Hail Mary, full of grace.
I love
like
that.
an
I love that you
auctioneer,
did that.
know. It's like, but at the end of 40 days, I heard psychologists once say that it takes 28 days to form or break a habit. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds good to me. And so Lent being 40 days, you know, you form a new habit. And at the end of Lent, I was like, I'm going to keep doing this. And
I think a good thing to do too if you're starting is I use this website. It's called rosarycenter.org, and it has scripturally based. It's like a scripturally based rosary. So it has little reflections for each of the Hail Marys, because I was just praying it mindlessly. Like I would be going to mass and be like, all right, got to get the rosary in. It's just like, you know, just spitting them out. But now I use my phone all the time, but I find that it's so fruitful to just think about all of these different aspects of Christ's life in the mysteries. And I find that very helpful. So I think it would be good, like, if you're starting to kind of do that to draw, or I guess to draw your attention in.
Yeah.
It's each of the Hail Marys.
Yes.
Oh my, that's pretty cool. That's
yeah,
awesome.
no, it's awesome. I love it.
Scriptural rosary is very powerful.
Yeah.
I think the brothers and I are they just did Morning Glories, or is that what it's called? But we were recommended another one called the True Devotion.
By St. Louis de Montfort. Yes,
Yes.
that's the consecration.
Yeah, I did that one.
That one's a lot longer.
That one's 40
like-
days instead of 33, but it's
And
intense.
it's like 2
Yeah.
hours a day.
No, it's
but-
not 2 hours a day.
There's a lot of
No, it's
prayers
not
and
that
a lot
much,
of
but-
readings and stuff. But the guy that recommended it, he was like, yeah, it's gonna take you between an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. And I was like, you know what?
Maybe I did it wrong when I did it.
I didn't.
I was like 15 minutes a day. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, there's
Nah.
some penance involved, but
Well, no, the one that he was showing us that he had a lot of like Bible readings and stuff like that, and it had a ton of prayers and whatnot, and a lot of reflections. And
You can, it's helpful, but
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I think the most important thing is just that you are just a son or daughter of Mary.
yeah,
You know, more than going through a certain prayer routine. Because the 33 days, I think, was very good, very doable for a lot of people that were daunted by the 40 days of St. Louis de Montfort.
yeah.
But both are great. So this wraps up our time today talking about our Blessed Mother. So my challenge for you you who are listening. This day, do something to honor our Blessed Mother. Maybe pray a rosary. If you don't have time for a rosary, maybe just a Memorare or a Hail Holy Queen, or just something to kind of give her the honor that God gives her. Because it's God ultimately that has lifted her up and has exalted her as Queen of Heaven and Earth. And so to honor God, we honor the choices He's made, and we honor the things that He's done in weak creatures such as Mary. And we ask her for her intercession as well. So thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Restless. You can catch us on 1350 AM, that's Veritas Catholic Radio, and also wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and see you next time.